We are joined by the Minister of Electricity. He has just came back from the briefing to... Why are they dropping the line?
Hello guys, can I just throw? Hello. I need to hear the anchor first.
Now to re-establish a line there, and I do understand Lula Mamatya is standing by, and I think this is some sort of a scrum with the media there as they try then to get the minister. So it does look like he is going to be doing an interview with some of the journalists that were watching these particular proceedings. So we'll take you live there as soon as we get a sense that Lulama is then able to hear us here in studio.
And of course, we've had two ministers on the case of electricity, as it were. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan in charge of Eskom, and Gwede Mantashe, Minister of Resources and Energy. They sometimes have made conflicting statements about the source of this problem. Now you have a third minister, and the speculation is that he will, well, the president says he will be given the powers he needs. So he will share those powers from those two ministers. Let's hear from him now.
The appointment, and of course I do appreciate that the task will be daunting. It won't be easy, but I guess that when the president gave me the assignment, I knew what I was getting myself into. But also just an appreciation that it's going to be a collective effort with all the major stakeholders in the energy sector. So first, starting with the monopoly that is Eskom is indispensable to the resolution of the energy problems in this country. Of course, the issues of generation, just improving plant efficiency, what we commonly refer to as the energy availability factor. So it's going to be key in this exercise. And then there's a need for us to accelerate procurement of new generation capacity, and that resides with the private sector. We already have a sense of the pipeline that is in the new generation. I think there are issues around accelerating this project to get to financial close. And then there are issues on the demand side with regards to ensuring that we introduce a demand balance, essentially reducing people's appetite at the household level, industry level, to consume electricity without undermining households' ability to meet their daily needs, without undermining commerce from meeting all their, if you like, commercial objective. So it's a quite delicate balancing act. So it's both the generation side and also the demand side. So our approach really is that we'll speak less about, in aggregate terms, about the nature and scale of the problem. As I speak to you, I think where I am, you need anything between 6,000 to 10,000 additional megawatts into the grid to be able to meet what the demands are. I think at any given time, Eskom can guarantee about 26,000 megawatts. And of that, about 6,000 is at a vulnerable state of unplanned maintenance or failure. And then when you reach winter, you need to service a peak demand of about 32,000 megawatts. So you can see that the gap is significantly big. So we need to close that gap. So when I come back, communicate to the country, of course, through the platform of the various media platform, is just to say to the country, how are we doing against the target of 6 to 10,000 megawatts? I'm saying 6 to 10,000 megawatts because I still need to do some degree of conversation exercise with the Eskom in particular to have an exact, if you like, energy deficit gap. Once we are able to get what that is, I think when we communicate to the general public is to say the following. What are the additional megawatts that have been added on the generation side? We measure it against that target of 10,000 megawatts. On the demand side, to what extent are we able to reduce demand so that the net effect gets us closer to the 10,000 megawatts? And then you also, when you are at the generation side, I mean, Eskom has got about 81 operating units, or units that are meant to be operating. We know that there's an urgent need to get this unit to operation, back into operation, because that's how you are going to lift that, rather, the energy availability factor. So the conversation is at the unit level, first at the station level, and then you go to the units that are not working, and ask the questions, why are these units not working? And of course, we'll get an explanation from, of course, our interface is through the board. We don't want to conflate the interface of the executive and the accounting authority, that is the board, and the accounting officer, that's the CEO, and the collective management team. So having gone through that process, just to try and understand from one station to the other, so that I don't speak to you in aggregate terms. I don't speak about in general terms. Energy availability factor is at 48%. It means nothing to the general public. So we need to say that these are the shortcomings at the plant level, and this is how we propose to lift the energy availability factor. So when you engage with the management at the plant level, you ask the question, why is it we have significant inefficiencies at the level of operations? I'm sure they'll take us through. The next question is, why is it that we are not addressing those? There could be that there's issues around the instrumentation. There could be issues around the turbines. The next question is, why are you not replacing those? The issue could be about the procurement dispensation, that they have to run a procurement dispensation that is inordinate in terms of time frames and undermines the ability to be agile and responsive. And that's when you begin to invoke the provision of the Disaster Management Act. So you shouldn't abuse the provisions of the Disaster Management Act. The first question you ask is whether the current dispensation does not allow us to move with the speed that is desired to resolve the problem. I think it's very important. And if the answer is negative, then we see how best do you invoke the tool that is provided for by the provision of the Disaster Management Act. So like I'm saying, it's plan to plan. And then new generation capacity. Ask the question to the project developers, why is it that these projects are not coming on stream? So it could be permitting, licensing issues, then we get to resolve those. It could be that they are not able to evacuate, if you like, the electricity because the grid is not designed to accommodate that additional capacity. Then you need to make interventions on the grid side. So having done all of these things, we'll come back to you and say, these are the time frames. Like the president said when he introduced the minister, when he was elaborating last night, we are not introducing a new plan. There's an existing energy plan in the country, energy action plan. So all that I'm assigned to do is to see to it, to the delivery of that energy action plan within the time frames that we have committed ourselves to. And that constitutes the template that will be the basis for me reporting to the country on to what extent are we achieving the energy action plan. So in a nutshell, that's how we'll be doing this. And of course, just asking for some degree of patience, because now I have to be at the plant level. I have to engage all the players and see to what extent have they committed to the plan, and how can we remedy, if you like, any shortcomings in delivering those time frames as committed to in the plan, and get to communicate to the general public. So it's important that we are transparent in the process, because I think one of the major difficulties in the management of this crisis is that we fail to communicate sufficiently to the general public. And I think that will change course. Of course, there are more technical explanation. Eskom does get to give those explanations. And I think that we'll try to the degree that is possible to really reduce it to a level where an average person can consume and understand where we are in relation to addressing load shedding. But I want to say the following. I am more than confident that we are going to resolve load shedding. I am more than confident that we are going to resolve load shedding. Of course, it's going to be daunting, like I said. We'll communicate to the public how we are addressing this situation, and also share what those timelines are going into the future, and we get to be held accountable against the timelines that we have communicated to the general public.
Minister, Eskom is faced with a lot of financial challenges. Are you going to be addressing or approaching Treasury or even the Minister of Finance?
Well, in the SONA, the President did make reference to a fiscal intervention to help to address Eskom challenges in relation to its debt situation, because that's undermining its ability to invest in maintenance. And then the Minister of Finance came back and articulated, if you like, a comprehensive intervention in relation to how we're going to socialize part of the debt so that we free up Eskom's ability to be able to invest in maintenance. And of course, that comes with a set of conditions, if you like, focusing on grid capacity, focusing on the repurposing of existing plant. Of course, the current arrangement conditions from National Treasury is that you will not be investing in new generation capacity. And I think that by extension, what that means is that you are opening up that space for players to come into the new generation capacity in the country. So of course, base load is key so that you are able to balance the system, the ratios, the frequency, because renewables alone will not help you to balance the system. So it's important that there's some degree of base load. Gas provide those opportunities. And if you look at the Energy Action Plan, it does make reference to introducing gas, if you like, about 3,000 megawatts of gas generation capacity. But yes, the point I'm making is that the Minister of Finance has already elaborated on the kind of relief that the fiscals will provide to Eskom, so that Eskom gets to be freed up and then focus on maintenance, which is essentially our albatross, because if you like, the deterioration, rapid deterioration of the energy availability factor, the fact that we had experienced 202 days of load shedding in the last calendar year, it's an indictment of the deterioration of the energy availability factor. I mean, we're sitting upwards of 70%, close to 80% 2010. At some point late last year, early this year, we're flirting with about 48% of the energy availability factor. So our best opportunity to address the load shedding crisis in the shortest possible time is to make interventions on the existing fleet of Eskom as we accelerate the new generation in the country.
Tomorrow, Minister, it's your new day officially at the office after being sworn in today. Where are you going to be? What is it that you're going to start with tomorrow? If South Africans are asking, what's your diary for tomorrow?
Well, it's an excellent question. Of course, I've got obligations as member of the executive, so there's a number of cabinet committees that are sitting, and I'm told that there's also a 3-line whip in Parliament. But really, it starts on Thursday with regards to physical meetings. I mean, I've already had engagement with the chair of Eskom, so I'm sitting with the chair of Eskom. Why do you start with the chair of Eskom? For obvious reasons. Eskom is indispensable to the resolution of the problem, the energy problems in this country. And then the people, other constituencies I'll be meeting on Thursday, these are confirmed meeting, is to engage with business. They also house the energy intensive users in the country. They consume up to 40% of our installed capacity. They account for 20% of GDP. So if we have the best opportunity to engage with them, address issues of embedded generation, how to accelerate the pipeline of projects that they have. We already have an appreciation. For an example, if you go to the Mineral Council, we have already had engagement in my previous capacity to try and accelerate their projects. So there is a pipeline of about 9,000 megawatts almost ready to go into the ground purposes of construction. And then is the visits to the plant. So of course, having met the chair of the board, gets to be introduced to the board, communicate with the board the kind of partnership that we want to have with them, because we are not going to blur the lines. They still remain the accounting authority. So it's important that we define that the nature of the relationship, and then go to the plant themselves. Just have an appreciation on the performance of the plant. When we're at the plant level, also engage with the organized labor in its many forms. And also we have been making contact with some of the major players, the labor in the energy sector. We will be engaging with them. We have confirmed meetings also with the big retailers in the country. Why are they significant? Because they've got a significant amount of rooftop space, and that can be exploited for purposes of PV, battery storage, and inverters. And of course, there are conversation about feed-in tariffs, what they generate in excess, they can bring it back to the grid. Of course, there's also technical conversation on first one, what is that tariff, and also design, if you like, the grid to be able to accommodate that which comes back into the grid. So we're having those conversations with them. We're finalizing conversations with the big farmers who are addressing the issues of potential challenges with regards to food security in the country. We have confirmed the meeting with all the big telcos in the country. I think it's the big four. We're meeting with the CEOs because we don't want to be disrupting communication network. So we'll be engaging with them. At every turn when we engage with these players, the question we ask is, what are the initiatives that you are making to address your own energy demands, and what is the kind of intervention that is required from government to accelerate, if you like, bringing on board or into the grid those interventions. So they are more purposeful. We are not asking the problem. We are asking how best can we work together to resolve this problem going into the future. We have already met with all the major banks in the country because we want to design a financing instrument for purposes of PV. Of course, what the minister has done on the one side is to introduce incentives, but you still need to invest your own capital to have the solar before you get access to those incentives. Not everyone is sitting with unencumbered cash. Not everyone is meet the risk profile that the banks are prepared to support individuals that meet that risk profile. So you still need to design some financing instrument so that you are able to address the possibility of rooftop solar. Having done that, if there's huge offtake, you are still going to sit with the problem of the availability of equipment. There's only 2 players in the manufacturing of solar PV, and they still can't meet that demand. So it's important that you introduce other players so that when you start, it could be importing, assembly, and over a period, then you manufacture. Then the next problem you're going to sit with is you must have accredited installers so that you are able to benefit. So I'm trying to explain to you that there's an entire value chain, but we are engaging with the major players.
What's the mandate that you've been given?
At Eskom?
Oh yes, I think it's a good question. So I don't want to talk about corruption in aggregate terms. So I'm going to be engaging with. Of course, there's a big step that I missed. It's engagement with Minister Mantashe and Minister Godan, Minister Chris. You have already started those conversations, so that as the government outfit, we have an appreciation of what are the, if you like, our defined role beyond what is on paper. How do you want to coordinate that intervention? So that work is happening, and also engaging with Minister Treasury tomorrow. Just going back to the issue of corruption, I don't want to talk about corruption in aggregate terms. So I'll go to Eskom. We'll get first-hand account from the board, from the executive management. I guess it's got different manifestation when you go to a plant level. Also, when you move from one plant to the other, it's got different manifestation, will require a different intervention. But if you go back to the energy action plan, there's a work stream that deals with the issues around infrastructure, sabotage and failure, and issues what you generally refer to as corruption. So I want to come and say, this is what we are experiencing at the plant level, and this is how we are going to address it.
Minister, what do you say to South Africans who remain skeptical about your appointment? Why was it necessary for the President to appoint a Minister of Electricity?
Okay, so we know the following. We know that load shedding has got direct implication on food security. So the farmers have said this themselves. We know also that a lot of businesses have gone under as a result of load shedding. As I speak to you, there are many households that they are going to sleep on an empty stomach because people, breadwinners, have lost opportunity and income generating opportunity. So that we know for a fact. We know that the cost of unserviced energy in the country amounts to about 500 billion rands per annum. We know that from Stats SA or the South African Reserve Bank, they make the point that load shedding reduces growth by 2.1 percentage points. We know that there are many health facilities that are unable to perform a major surgery as a result of load shedding. We know that the reservoirs are running dry. You just have to go for an example. Gauteng rainwater is battling, not because there's a bulk shortage of water, but because we are not able to refill the reservoirs as a result of load shedding. We know that when you drive the streets of major cities, even remote rural towns, traffic lights are off, has got a real risk of resulting into accidents and in some extreme instances resulting in fatalities. So it's an extraordinary event and it requires a particular attention. And I know that there's been an attempt to ridicule, if you like, the appointment of an electricity minister, juxtaposing it with potholes. Why not the minister of potholes? But I've just mapped to you what are the implications and the cost of load shedding to the South African economy, to the lived experiences of our people. So what is the president saying? Is that we must have a laser and single focus on addressing the issue of load shedding. And you need someone who will live, eat, breathe the resolution of this problem so that there's no other diversions or competing requirements on that person's diary. And in the calculation of the president, you need someone who carries the executive authority to be able to exert himself or herself, and now we know it's him, in relation to resolving this problem and engaging with all the major stakeholders. So it's an extraordinary event. It's got catastrophic implications if we don't get to address it. So we need to pay that attention on the resolution of the problem of load shedding.
Do you have time frames?
Oh yes, we know, for an example, that the sixth administration at some point will come to an end. So all that we are saying is that the president says a few things, is that reduce the intensity and frequency of load shedding. So in that statement, there's an admission that perhaps it might not be possible in the next 18 months to resolve load shedding in its totality. But we must be able to illustrate that we are adding additional capacity to the grid and we are reducing the intensity and regularity of load shedding. And I think, to answer your question, my approach is I see myself as a portfolio manager who has got executive authority. So it's an important point that I'm making, because my attention is on the detail. So I'm out of the politics of electricity and energy. Is at the plant level, how do you raise the energy availability factor? So you go to issues of instrumentation, turbines, where can you procure them? How do you procure them? Is the price competitive? Are we going to the original equipment manufacturer? Do we have the right skills to be able to install this? We are at that level. So we're not at the level of load shedding stage 6, stage 7. It's about getting this energy availability factor up. We go to renewable energy project sponsors. Like I said, we ask the question, why is it that you are a preferred bidder but you are not getting to financial close? Then they will say, perhaps, amongst others, there's issues of EIAs, there's issues of water use license, whatever is applicable. So we need to accelerate that. As you accelerate that, you invoke the provisions of the Disaster Management Act. So those provisions are not to be abused. First, you ask the question, in the current dispensation, why aren't we able to address this? If the issue is about the lackluster nature of departments, then let's address that and leave the regulations alone. But if the issue can be proven that it's as a result of the inordinate requirement of the current legislation under conditions of normality, then you invoke those provisions. And then I come back to the country. We have added so many megawatts to the grid. We have strengthened this the grid capacity. As a result, this is how its implication of adding additional megawatts, and also the demand side, like I said. We must address the issues of availability of equipment. I mean, it's a logistics issue now. So where are you going to warehouse them? How are they going to move from one place to the other? Do you have the right skills to be able to install? Because the last thing you want is to install solar PV and people's houses go up in smoke because people are not accredited. So it's those things that you need to attend to. Where is the financing going to come from? Like I said, Few people are sitting with unencumbered cash. A number of people don't meet the risk profile to get loans from the bank, financial assistance. How can we creatively design a financial instrument so that we open up the ability of average households to benefit and access this opportunity? Because the last thing you want is a suggestion, insinuation, or an experience that this only favors the rich and the poor are excluded, when in fact we know that the problem is affecting all of us. All premiers, with no exception, they made pronouncements around interventions of their respective province on relieving their citizens in relation to load shedding. And you can understand the impatience and enthusiasm to resolve that. But the grid operate as an integrated system. So the provision or the network is not federalized. So it doesn't get to a point and say we end here is a Free State and then is the Northern Cape. No, it's a single network. So you don't want to disrupt and create an imbalance. So we're at that level, at a very technical level, on how you resolve these things. But of course, when we get to communicate to the public, we will simplify a very complex technical problem so that people can appreciate that if there is progress or there is no progress, and then we can be measured against those. And
Minister, you say...
Hands-on, Minister.
Oh yes, this is one of the few occasions you'll find me wearing a suit. I had to wear this because I'm coming. No, you are on the ground. Project managers are on the ground. I don't get to only be explained about the problem. I need to experience the problem. What's going to help me is that I'm an engineer. Engineers are trained to resolve problems. So this is my forte. The more technically complex it looks, the more impossible it looks, the greater my appetite. So this is something I'm ready for the fight. Of course, working with the collective of the players. The appointment of an electricity minister doesn't resolve load shedding. The actions of the electricity minister working with the player stakeholders resolve load shedding. It's an important point to be made. So now that I've been sworn in, so it doesn't, I mean, a lot of people are not seeing this conversation, because are experiencing conditions of load shedding. So it's up to us through our actions to address this. Media conferences don't resolve load shedding. Going to the plant, resolve load shedding. And that's what we're going to do. And the next time we meet, hard heads on, boots, we are on the ground. And like I said, I mean, I'm not making this really to ridicule the point or overemphasize it. We are at that level. Ground zero. So that's where we are going to attend to the problem. So get ready. We're ready.
Hands-on, Minister. Are you able to put your head on the block and tell South Africans that by a certain time you should have achieved what are your targets you should have achieved, and if not, you're going to resign?
Yeah, it's very irresponsible of a project manager in the boardroom at a press conference to commit timelines. What I just said I will do is to have the engagement with the multiple players. There's an energy action plan. It already has timelines there. Ask the question if we are able to meet these timelines. If the answer is no, why is it that we can't meet these timelines? If it requires us invoking the provisions of the Disaster Management Act, we'll do that, and then we'll present to the country that having done all of this, these are the dates that we are committing ourselves to. That's what project managers do. So on my feet, I can't make that. It's a populist statement. I know that there's an appetite, if you like, that is justified from our people. They really want to know from this minister, when is load shedding going to end? And when I left my house, my son was telling me, but Daddy, when is load shedding going to end? No, I'm not having a switch on-off. So the point I'm making is that we are going to be honest to the South African people. It's important and transparent about our ability to address this. I did say when I started earlier on, I am more than confident that we'll be able to resolve load shedding, and we'll come back to you with those timelines.
Thank you very much, Minister. That was the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, saying that he is confident that the issue of load shedding will be a thing of the past. He has highlighted and told the nation about his plans going forward, about what he's going to do. And as he's saying that he's not switching on and off. There is a plan in place that is aimed at defeating load shedding. With that, back to you at the studio.